Okay, so you want to own a movie theater. Buy a building, put up a giant screen, sell some tickets, and let the crowds pour in every Friday night for the biggest blockbuster of the year. It sounds like one of the safest businesses in the world. People have been going to the movies for over 100 years. The films change every week, but the audience keeps coming back. Here's the strange part. On the biggest opening weekend of the year, when your theater is completely sold out and there's a line around the block, you, the theater owner, keep almost none of the money from those tickets. Sometimes you keep nothing at all. The single most profitable item in your entire building costs you about 15 cents and sells for $8, and it isn't the movie. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why a sold-out blockbuster can be a terrible weekend for a theater owner. You'll know how a movie theater actually makes its money because it is almost never the ticket. And you'll know why an entire industry that sold more than 800 million tickets a year in America was brought to the edge of collapse by a screen the size of your hand. Movie theaters come in 3 sizes, and they are 3 completely different businesses. At the small end, you have the single-screen independent or the local art house. 1 or 2 screens, a couple hundred seats, maybe $1 million or less to buy or fit out. You're not competing on blockbusters here. You're selling curation, indie films, classics, a night out that feels different from the mall. Then there's the mid-size multiplex, 8 to 16 screens, the kind anchored to a shopping center. Several $1 million to build out. This is the workhorse of the industry, playing every wide release, feeding off whatever Hollywood ships that week. And then there's the megaplex, 20 screens or more, recliner seating, giant premium formats, in-house bars, and full kitchens. These run well over $10 to $20 million to build, and they're less a theater than an entertainment complex that happens to show films. The largest chains, companies like AMC and Cinemark, operate hundreds of these, tens of thousands of screens between them. But the building is just the start. 2 costs nobody warns you about. The first is the film rental terms. And this is the one that breaks people. When a studio sends you a movie, you don't buy it. You split the ticket revenue with them, and the split is brutally lopsided in the studio's favor, especially early. On a major opening weekend, the studio can take somewhere around 60 to 70% of every ticket dollar, sometimes more for the biggest releases. The theater keeps the rest, and the deal is structured so the studio's cut is highest in week 1, when the crowds are biggest, and then slides down in the theater's favor over the following weeks, long after most of the audience has already come and gone. So think about what that means. The blockbuster everyone lines up for on opening night, that's the weekend. The studio takes the biggest bite. By the time the split finally tilts in your favor in week 4 or 5, the movie is half empty. You make the least money exactly when the theater is fullest, and the most money when it's nearly empty. That is the fundamental trap of this business, and every theater owner lives inside it. The second cost is the projection technology. When the industry converted from film reels to digital, every theater had to install expensive digital projectors, tens of thousands of dollars per screen. Multiply that across 16 screens, and it's a fortune, and the technology keeps changing under you. Laser projection, premium large formats, new sound systems, each one another round of capital spending on a business that already runs on thin margins. Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? And here's the part that breaks people's brains. It is almost never the ticket. The ticket revenue mostly passes through to the studio. What the theater actually keeps, what the entire business is quietly built around, is the concession stand. That popcorn, that soda, that box of candy, the margins there are staggering. A large popcorn might cost the theater somewhere around 50 to 70 cents in corn, oil, bag, and butter, and sell for $8 or $9. That's a gross margin north of 80, even 90%. Soda is close behind, syrup and ice sold for the price of a small meal. The industry has a phrase for the theater itself. It's a place that sells popcorn and happens to show movies. The film on the screen is the thing that gets people through the door. The concession stand is the thing that pays the rent. A theater keeps a small slice of a ticket it had to split with a studio, and it keeps almost the entire price of a bucket of popcorn it made for pocket change. Guess which one the whole business actually depends on. This is why theaters are laid out the way they are. You cannot get to a screen without walking past the concession counter. The smell of popcorn is pumped through the lobby on purpose. The line is positioned so you stare at the menu board while you wait. Everything about the building is engineered to convert a ticket buyer into a concession buyer because the ticket barely matters and the popcorn is where the profit lives. There's a second layer that most people never think about. The pre-show advertising, those commercials that play before the trailers, theaters get paid to run them. A captive audience of hundreds of people staring at a giant screen, unable to skip, unable to leave. Advertisers pay real money for that, and it drops almost straight to the theater's bottom line. And the newest layer is premium formats, the big screen, reclining seat, extra charge auditoriums, where the theater adds several dollars to the ticket for an experience you genuinely can't get at home. So, the whole model in one sentence. Give away most of the ticket to the studio, then own the popcorn, the soda, the ads, and the premium seat. It's less a movie business and more a snack bar, with a very expensive customer acquisition strategy playing on the walls. So with guaranteed content shipped to you every week, and popcorn margins most businesses can only dream about, why do theaters lose money? Because two forces are squeezing this business at the same time, and almost every theater is dealing with both. Force one is the shrinking window. For decades, the deal was simple. A movie played only in theaters for about 90 days before it could go anywhere else. That exclusivity was the theater's entire leverage. If you wanted to see the new release, you had to buy a ticket. Then the studios collapsed that window. Now, a film might hit streaming just weeks after opening, sometimes less. Why fight the crowds and pay for parking and popcorn when the same movie lands on your couch in 17 days? Every week, shaved off that window, is a week of audience the theater will never get back. Force 2 is streaming itself. The living room became a home theater. Big screens, good sound, a library of thousands of titles for the price of 2 movie tickets a month. The thing the theater used to sell, access to new films, simply stopped being unique to theaters. And the theater's core product was never really the film anyway. It was convenience and exclusivity. And streaming broke both at once. And then, on top of both of those slow pressures, came the sudden one. In early 2020, the worst thing that can happen to a business with enormous fixed costs and captive audience revenue happened to every theater in the world simultaneously. The doors closed for months. No tickets, no popcorn, no ads, nothing. But the rent didn't stop. The debt payments didn't pause. The buildings still had to be maintained. AMC, the largest chain on earth, came within a breath of bankruptcy, burning through hundreds of millions of dollars with zero revenue coming in. It survived only because a wave of retail investors bought the stock, and the company raised emergency cash off that frenzy. One of the strangest survival stories in modern business. The industry lived, but it came out the other side, smaller, deeper in debt, and facing an audience that had spent a year learning it could get along just fine without the theater at all. Step back for a second, because this is a genuine paradox. A movie theater has one of the most reliable supply chains in entertainment. Fresh product shipped to it every single week, marketed with hundreds of millions of dollars of studio advertising the theater doesn't pay for. And yet the theater keeps almost none of the ticket that marketing drives, survives on popcorn, and can be gutted by a release calendar, and a streaming strategy set entirely by the same studios that supply it. The theater controls almost nothing that matters. It doesn't make the films, it doesn't set the release dates, it doesn't control the split or the streaming window. It sets the price of popcorn, the comfort of the seats, and how clean the bathrooms are. That's the business. Everything else is decided upstream by people whose interests don't fully line up with yours. 2 scenarios. Real numbers, scenario 1. A small independent theater. 1 or 2 screens, low overhead, a loyal local crowd. You're not getting the blockbusters on favorable terms, but you're not betting the building on them either. You program indie films, classics, special events, and you make your money on a devoted audience, a bar, and concessions with fat margins in a good year. With a tight cost base and a community that shows up, you clear a modest but real profit. In a bad year, 1 slow season, or 1 rent hike can wipe you out because you have no scale to absorb it. This is the passion project end of the business. It lives or dies on the neighborhood. Scenario 2. A modern megaplex. 20 screens, recliners, premium formats, a full bar and kitchen. In a strong year, with a stacked slate of blockbusters and every big format auditorium selling out, a location like this generates serious revenue, and the concessions and premium upcharges throw off real profit even after the studios take their cut. But that same building, in a weak film year, when the release calendar is thin and no title breaks out, is a fixed cost monster. The rent, the staff, the debt on all that expensive equipment don't care how many people showed up. Same building, same screens, same popcorn machine. The difference between a great year and a brutal one is a movie release schedule the theater has zero control over. That's why every serious operator in this business obsesses over two numbers above all: concession spend per head and how many premium seats they can sell. The ticket is a coin flip decided in Hollywood. The popcorn and the recliner are the only levers the theater actually holds. So that is the actual economics of owning a movie theater. It is not a business about movies. It's a business about a bucket of popcorn sold to a crowd that a studio spent hundreds of millions of dollars to send through your door on a ticket you barely got to keep for a movie that will be on their couch before the month is out. Build it right, in the right location, with the right premium experience, and the right margins on everything that isn't the film, and you own a room that people still choose to leave the house for in a world designed to keep them home. Build it wrong, or hit one bad year on a release calendar you don't control, and you'll find out exactly how expensive it is to keep the lights on. In 20 empty auditoriums, waiting for a blockbuster that Hollywood decided, this time, to send straight to the screen in everyone's living room instead of yours.